After an accident, stepmom lied to Dad saying I had taken the car behind her back, and he kicked me out while I was bedridden. They wanted me at their vow renewal 2 years later. 2 years ago, then, I had a horrible vehicle accident. After a drunk truck rear-ended me, I suffered really severely since I was left totally bedridden for 3 months. After the mishap, even with effort, I was quite unable to move a muscle as everything hurt so much. I was therefore rather busted, but that didn't really matter since my dad kicked me out of the house anyhow. Back then, I was 18 years old and had driven the car out to practice for my driver's license exam, which was a few days away when I got into that accident. I had not driven very far. I was in the neighborhood when it happened. Since my father had made it quite obvious that I had to ask at least one parent before I drove the car in any circumstance, I had specifically asked for permission from my stepmom. I so requested her since my dad was at work. She had informed me I could take the automobile. Later on, though, she turned the narrative around to suggest that I was out simply looking cool, seeing pals. I had stolen the car and slipped out without asking her. My dad kicked me out after deciding to believe her without even hearing my side story. Although my stepmother had always been strange around me, I had never expected her to lie to my dad about something like this, and getting me tossed out of the house was just extreme. Ever since I was 4 years old, she had been in my life. My biological mother had never been there. She signed away her parental rights after deciding, haphazardly, that she no longer wanted to be a mother after delivering me. Her left easily since my dad and her were never married. And my father never questioned it as he was eager to take care of me all on his own and embrace the responsibility. She had never tried to be in my life. Thus I was glad. My father began seeing my stepmother when I was 4 years old, and 3 years later they were married. But by then I knew my stepmother had no desire in raising me. She was nothing else but the wife of my father. She normally avoided me, and we did not get along especially well when I was a child, but, as I grew older, we started getting even less along and would dispute regularly. She would take it to excessive heights even if the disagreements were about small issues, and then she would complain to my father about my horrible behavior, and he would always side with her, which was really annoying since she was the one that started problems with me needlessly. We were already not on great terms, so I was glad I would be heading away to college in a few months. But it never happened, and since my father wanted me no longer, I had to move live with my grandparents. Given Dad's rather wealthy background, it had little to do with money. Not only apart from that, he owns a paper firm. The car was insured as well as he had medical insurance for the whole family. I thus know absolutely that it had nothing to do with money. Everything my stepmother had told me about the way the accident had happened made him kick me out of the house. I wanted to look cool, hence I had taken the car out without her permission. She had prepared and fed him some ridiculous narrative about how I had been intending on going out with pals. She reportedly informed him she had learned about it by listening in on me, and that she had even advised me not to engage in such behavior following that talk. But I had just disregarded her and made special effort to accomplish exactly that. Following the accident, the physicians advised me to be immobile for the next few months until I recovered sufficient to resume my regular movement. I was already suffering enough from that and the accident's agony. Then to top it off, my stepmom had started fabricating lies about me to lie to my dad. We kept debating what the reality was for 1 week, and finally I lost my calm and started screaming at her, calling her many names. I stated she was crazy in the head for trying to accuse me of doing something I hadn't even done, especially considering my condition. She was accused of lying, and I said she was just envious that she could not have my father all to her. That was essentially my father's last straw, and he chose to move me to my grandparents' house, which was gracious enough to welcome me. When I was in such horrible health, and I even told my father that I was never going to see him the same way again, I felt rather offended that my father was kicking me out of the house. And he said that he couldn't keep hurting his wife simply because I wanted to be a brat, and apparently I had to be disciplined. He obviously had chosen his side, and he had opted to accept my stepmom's account of events, as he did not believe me. For me, it was quite sad thereafter. I decided I was never going to talk to him once more. Since right from my youth had simply been me and him, it was a really difficult decision I had to make. In my mind, my stepmother had never really belonged in my family. She had been there from start. But I never thought of her as part of the family, since I'm very sure she didn't think of me family either. But following that choice my father made, I came to the conclusion that none of them fit enough to be referred to as family, since that was a significant title bearing a lot of obligations. I appreciated that my father had first attempted to be there for me, but ultimately he valued my stepmother far more than me. Following my move-in with my grandparents, they looked after me and even paid a full-time nurse to assist with daily tasks. They were friendly people I had always gotten along well with them. I had not moved in with them earlier solely because I was still hoping that perhaps my father might change at last, but tough luck for me, he did not. Still, since they could see I was going through a very difficult moment in my life, they are decent people who took care of me and made me feel rather loved. They attempted to persuade my father to see me, but he kept coming up with excuses. Occasionally he was too busy, and other times he was too weary from work. He so neglected to see me even once after the accident for about 2 months, following his ejection from my residence. Because of his behavior, even my grandparents got into a quarrel with him and claimed it unfair to me. Apparently, my stepmom disapproved of me anymore and had given him an ultimatum to pick between her or me. Hence my father decided to inform them he had no intention of getting back on nice terms with me anytime soon. He had chosen her. He could not see us having a relationship until that point, since he thought that I had been a very challenging child to deal with in recent times and could not put up with that kind of behavior anymore, for his own sake and his wife's. He felt that I needed to learn to be a better person and get along with others. That was that. Thereafter we have not spoken. Having healed, my grandparents sent me to college. They have been there for me all along. 2 years have gone since then. I am going to graduate in 1 year now. Thus I have been trying to go on with my life, and it has been challenging, but I have excellent friends and grandparents to be at my side, so it is somewhat easy for me. Still, I hadn't heard anything from or about my parents in the past few years until recently. I had no intention of ever exacting revenge or interfering with their life. I guess my stepmom has major mental issues, as she contacted me last week to tell me that she and my father were renewing their wedding vows in a couple of weeks, and she wanted me to attend that event. I was living and doing just fine without him. She wanted me there, and I was really perplexed as to why she wanted me there. I responded right away to let her know I would not be attending. She informed me, however, that I had to be there completely, since my father was scheduled to formally ask me about it in a few days, and one of the main reasons he wanted me there was because some of his business associates would also be there. They had spotted some family pictures of his desk, so they knew he had a daughter. Furthermore, it would be quite strange to tell them why I missed such an occasion, and that my father had been contacting me in order to atone for the file. She wanted me, nonetheless, to simply accept the offer and go past all. Though it had only been 2 years, I was never going to be able to forget the way my dad had made me feel, hence I was not ready to put anything behind us. She then threatened me and said I could either be there or I could give up any dreams of inheriting my father's company or money over time. She then mentioned that she would make sure of it, which infuriated me, as she truly believed she could scare me with her ridiculous threats. She entered my last nerve, so I at last blocked her. I had only blocked them on social media prior this, but it simply seemed pointless, hence I had not banned their phone numbers. But I blocked both their phone numbers as well following that message. And I believed that this was going to be the end of it, but even that was not enough. I guess she got in touch to me by email and stated I absolutely had to accept the invitation, since the renewal of the wedding vows was not only an event for them. It connected also to the job of my father, and he really wanted me present. She still cannot have spoken more politely to me, particularly considering it was they who needed me. I decided I had enough as she continued to scare me into getting her way. I resolved to face the matter by creating a post and attaching all the evidence of the chats we had thus far. I had no reason to flee from these things. I additionally decided to call her and my father out on social media after penning about all that has passed. Along with a few of my dad's buddies from work, whose names and social media profiles I could identify, I made it a public post, including even tagging my dad and my stepmom. I wanted his work acquaintances and business associates to know what he had done to me in the past, since my stepmom had made it quite clear to me that the renewal of their wedding vows would be a business event for them as well. That was a purposeful action. I expected nothing after the post, but one day later I got word from my grandparents that my father was depressed, as obviously what I had done had resulted in a great loss for them. Though it was still in the early phases, they were scheduled to merge with an office supply company in a few months now. It was most likely called off due of my post. It was intended to be a major event for his business, but since I had tagged certain individuals in my post, news got out about what had happened to me, and my father's reputation clearly suffered since he did not come off looking very decent in that post. My father has thus been unable to obtain a response from anyone who was working with him thus far, and he thinks that this is due in part to the post I created. This makes the merger under doubt now. Since my stepmother was going out of her way to be nasty to me, my grandparents believe that what I did was most likely not very good, and there was no reason for me to engage my father in all of this. And right now I also feel somewhat guilty. So AITA, for posting to publicly call out my father and stepmother? Update 1. Hi, I decided to post assaulting my parents down since it has been a few days since my last one. Since I clearly don't get along with either of my dad or my stepmom, some of you have also been asking me why I was calling them my parents. My dad is clearly a biological father to me, hence, even if I don't particularly enjoy my stepmother, I have grown used to referring to her as my parent since I was a small child. Neither do I know how to phrase it any differently. It's nothing deep, hence it's not really important. Still, returning to what I'd done, I unblocked my father and deleted that post so I could get in touch to him. Although most people in the comments section think I did not owe anyone an apology, I felt at least I could clarify that I had absolutely no idea about the merger and how significant it may have proven to be for his company, therefore anything so horrible could not have happened. I kind of rationalized myself and told him that everything that had happened 2 years back lingered with me, and I haven't been able to really move on from that. I didn't precisely apologize. Despite that was only because he wanted to pretend everything with his family was normal in front of his business associates, so tried to make apologies with me despite knowing he was going to invite me to an event. It hurts. I made that post so I could put all of it in one text and send it to my stepmom, since the way she had been acting with me had been quite nasty. Since I thought he would be somewhat enraged with whatever had happened, I didn't really expected him to respond to that. Nevertheless, he did respond to me and just told me that was okay. Given all he had done, he earned this. And he did not hold me accountable for my response. I thought that maybe my grandparents would know why he seemed to be acting so peculiar, since I had definitely expected him to at least be annoyed and berate me for what I had done, but nothing of the sort had happened. That was a pretty weird reaction, and so I decided to talk to them about it. When I approached my grandparents about this, they claimed that evidently he had been regretting his actions for a very long time now, and it simply suddenly came to light when I posted that. They claimed to have lately addressed these issues with my father, just before I wrote that SMS to him. And he had admitted how much he regretted excluding me back then. Though he said he had simply been unsure about what to do, it had been his own personal decision to do it. He had bought it, but then he started questioning himself. Whatever my stepmother would tell him a couple of weeks after she had kicked me out, she always made it sound rather believable. He knew he deserved this, hence he did not try to fight back or even dispute with me when I sent him that text. He had just never been able to have the bravery to set things right with me. They also clarified to me that it was not only meant to wow his business associates, as my stepmother had told me he had actually wanted to invite me to the renewal of their wedding vows. Actually, his business partners were not even invited to the occasion. It was a very personal and closed matter, hence he had no idea why she would say such a thing. Most likely to sour my dad's and my relationship. I never really knew her motivation. Still, he had seen the screenshots I had provided and understood that my stepmother had a problem with falsehoods and that they had also hit a difficult period. He hadn't gotten back from the person he was meant to be merging with yet. He is thus presuming that it has been called off and will subsequently get a formal email or another correspondence. For now, though, he is trying to cope with his personal life's mess. After that conversation with my grandparents, I honestly have no idea how I should feel. They expressed pride of me for acting morally and getting in touch with him. Even if it was not to apologize, since I had just reacted any other person in my place, and even my grandparents do not believe that apology is required in the situation due of some misinterpretation resulting from my stepmother. Still, they value that. At least I showed the decency to get in touch with him and try to mend things with him. I simply don't know, though, how I should feel about my dad and me's circumstances now. Before, when I did not interact with him, I honestly found it easier to deal with my emotions now. Things have been pretty awful over the past 2 years between us. Now, I just don't know how I feel about all of this. Update 2. Hey, so many of the comments on my previous update advised me to keep no contact with my father and not get in touch with him once more. Though I'm not sure about you people, I really do not think that's the correct approach. Nevertheless, I already broke the no contact rule by getting in touch with him. Following that post hence, I do not think I could precisely go back all of a sudden. I still have a lot of unresolved problems and unanswered questions. I doubt I could return to not interacting with him very soon. Perhaps following at least one conversation with him to get the closure I need, or whatever, maybe then. But until then, I honestly don't think that what you guys are implying is even doable for me. I know what my heart wants, hence I don't care whether people label me foolish or weak. I also know what's right for me. Trust me, I got this. Still, I told my grandparents how I was feeling and suggested that it would be best if we sat down and had a chat with one another. They also mentioned that they are in the process of contacting my father and setting up our meeting since they felt that would be a great idea as well. From what I know, so far between him and my stepmom things are not going too great. They might be headed for a divorce. Though I'm not sure yet, it would be very humorous if that were to occur since they were just about to repeat their vows, and now that is not going to happen, they might find themselves divorcing. Discuss sarcasm. Returning to what my grandparents told me, however, they have been in contact with my father and are also working to mend their relationship with their son since my grandparents have limited time and must maximize it. Their whole life is not ahead of them as I do. I can thus see why they wish to right things with him. My grandparents told me he has been rather depressed and doesn't even seem to care about the merger failing through. All he talks about is how he screwed up as a father and failed me. Besides, it seems to me that my dad is sincerely apologetic for everything that has happened in the past. I never really gave things from his point of view any thought. My grandparents have informed me they will be speaking with him and let me know when we may get together. And I just wish it goes nicely. Hello, update 3. 2 days ago, then, at last I saw my father following 2 years of no communication. We got together at my grandparents' place and it was rather moving. I find it hard to believe still. At last I could sit down and discuss everything that had been troubling me with him, and I found the solutions to the long-standing concerns I had been wondering about. He began by apologizing to me for what he had put me through and said he knew he had failed as a father, and did not even deserve to be seated in the same room as me since I had turned out to be a better person than he had ever imagined, and he had no role to play in any of it. Which I do not think is true. He was the one who raised me, essentially alone as, in younger years, my stepmother simply avoided me. Before then, he had always been a wonderful father to me. Our connection only turned bad as I grew older and things went down with my stepmother. Still, he admitted he had made a number of mistakes, the greatest of which was putting my stepmother over me. He said he never imagined she would lie to him since, when it was just the two of them, she was quite adept at manipulating him. He had assumed she was telling the truth because she was older, and I have to confess she was a smooth talker. He admitted he had been deceived, and that he was really perplexed about who was speaking the truth, and whom to believe ended up guiding him to make the wrong decision. And even after he began to doubt himself, he lacked the confidence to own his errors and approach me. He had not contacted me either after kicking me out of the house. From the bottom of his heart, he stated he was really contrite for all of it now. It was up to me whether I should embrace that apology and try to mend our relationship or not. He assured me that he would be fine with whatever decision I made, even if I chose not to pardon him and return to not interacting with him, as he understood he had seriously fouled up. He also told me she had moved out of the house already, and he and my stepmom were destined for a divorce. Following the view of those screenshots, she had misled me about the reason for his invitation to the vow renewal. When he questioned her about what she had told me, they got into a major argument. She acknowledged everything, even lying 2 years ago, on what had occurred to the car and the reason I had that accident. He asked her to leave and filed for a divorce after that, as clearly he could no longer be with her. I told him I would need some time to consider things since it was somewhat tough for me to make decisions right then and there. And right now I'm trying to figure out whether I ought to give him another chance or not. Though most people would say I shouldn't, in the end he's my father and only I can make the best choice. Besides, I am an adult now and I seldom actually need him for anything. And he isn't depending on me either. I'm planning to start working and become financially independent once I finish from college. That seems to be a popular argument here, hence that element is totally out of the equation, just in case anyone wanted to accuse him of attempting to make things right with me, just because he wanted to be able to depend on me once he retired. Given his company is performing rather well both with and without the merger, I do not believe that is the case. His sales and figures did not change even after his reputation suffered. I so believe that speaks for itself. Between a father and a daughter. Their relationship is completely emotional now. I have to decide whether or not I should pursue working on that relationship. He is the only parent I have ever had, hence, even if the past few years have been terrible, I cannot let that define everything he has done. I am leaning toward yes. I'm sharing it here to see what others think, though I'm not sure yet. This is my only chance I really want to right things and have a true shot at a normal family. Therefore, kindly keep that in mind before offering any remarks, since I truly like things to go according. Edit 4. I then resolved to try and improve my relationship with my father. Next week we are beginning treatment together. Hopefully this works well for us. We also intend to actively restore our relationship by means of frequent communication and actual conversation between us. Actually, my grandparents are very delighted about it, and I have honest optimism for the future. I really am ready to put all behind us and forward.